Good evening and welcome to the Balie. My name is Veronica Baas. I'm a program editor here, and tonight I will be moderating this evening on the future of art education in the Netherlands. Every year, hundreds of students graduate from with a fine arts degree at an art academy, and that means that they have a diploma that says they are a professional artist. But what does it mean to be a professional artist? And also, what is the role of art academies in upholding and shaping that profession? Tonight we will be discussing with current students what they are seeing as the biggest challenges that they face. But we will also be asking the question what it means as an art academy to prepare students to be an artist in a society that is increasingly hostile towards art, and a society in which it is quite difficult to sustain oneself through art. And those questions we will be discussing, and then we will be asking ourselves the question, what does that then mean for the future of art education in the Netherlands? So that's what I will be doing, and I have great speakers here tonight. I'm very happy that they will join me on the stage, but I'm also interested in you. Just to get an estimate, is there anyone currently a student at an art academy now? Okay, that's a big chunk of you, good. And everyone, someone who has graduated? About the other half, that's about the other half. Someone who isn't affiliated with art academies in any way? Okay, a few people, that's good. So we represent the society at large, to which the art academies have to relate themselves tonight. That's great. Is there someone who wants to say something about maybe their biggest worry of the future when it comes to art academies in the Netherlands? No one's worried. That's good. We're positive. Is someone curious about what the developments will be? Is there something someone wants to lay on the table for us to discuss tonight already? In the back. I will be trusting you with the mic, but please give it back at some point.
I am curious whether the art industry is going to relate to other sectors and how in the future. Great.
Good question. Someone else here at the front?
Yes, I would like to know how do you make the societal impact explicit? Because it's very implicit. Everyone says, yes, we do, but what is it?
Good question. Relating to other fields and explicating your impact, a final one.
I'm thinking I'm particularly triggered by the idea of sort of the professional dynamic, the frame that you have. Does meaning a successful trajectory through art education also necessitates a professional art career?
What do you think?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, good. Well, let me ask one of those. Those are all great questions, and I want to start by introducing the man who is responsible for all of us being here, because he started. Wait, I'm talking into two mics at the same time. Let me get my admin straight, because I would like to start by introducing Huib Haye van der Werf, who is here. Please join me and please give him a warm applause. Yeah, a writer, a researcher, a podcaster, and in the podcast series Art Schools, he gives voice to students from several art academies in the Netherlands, and they reveal the realities of art life as an art student today, and their thoughts and feelings about the future. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for making this possible. You are the reason that we want to have this bigger conversation. So starting with the obvious question, why did you make this podcast?
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Veronica, and everybody for being here, by the way. I think it's fantastic that this evening is sold out, first and foremost. I'll try and keep my answers as short as possible because I think it's important that the students get to speak as much as they can this evening, which is the same reason why I made this podcast. I was asked in 2023, towards the end of the year, the Dutch Ministry for Education, Culture and Science made money available that was earmarked for students who had been disimbalanced, I suppose, due to COVID. And they either didn't have a final exam or the opportunity for networking at their study, or certain classes falling through, etc. And the Mondriaan received money and wanted to package that money into a program that would sort of quickly and acceleratedly help those students out. The program was called Power Up, and the idea was to spread it around the Netherlands as much as possible. There was enough money to do that. And I quickly realized actually I think the first city in The Hague, we worked together with different organizations, platforms in each city, always on Mondays when cultural organizations are closed otherwise anyway. And the first session, it was quite obvious that by just giving the information, this is how you become an artist, this is where you sign up for the Chamber of Commerce, this is where you find funding, was quite dry. And in fact, actually a lot of recent graduates knew this information already or were sharing it amongst themselves. There wasn't a deeper understanding of what actually you could do with your practice and what artistic practice can do for you, much less outside of that. So a program was put together where eventually 75 workshops around the Netherlands with each time a group of students in each of these host cities would get together on Mondays, and each time a workshop would be art as a community process, art and technology, art as a commercial endeavor, art and public space, very specific subjects, so that you notice that what these recent graduates were experiencing was a way to measure their practice and their thinking. And that's what they wanted, actually. More than being told how to professionally put it together in a package, they wanted to see the professional packages and see how they relate to that. And then I realized, and thought to myself also in conversations with them, why didn't they have more insight into this during their professional education?
Did you think that you were filling a hole that shouldn't have been there?
I think in general, if we speak in general terms, yes. There was a hole that needed filling, that understanding. There's a lot of talk by now, since I've done this podcast, there has been a lot of speaking about it, and a lot of academies are working on the subject. But what I noticed was, because there was a lot of eager conversation with me and a lot of very positive reactions from these recent graduates, it maybe was time to let the students actually tell their story. Because a lot of research has been done and a lot of thoughts have been shared, but always and often through either the teachers, through higher bodies that represent various organizations, that represent various artistic practices or professional committees, etc., either through ministerial level or municipal level. But very rarely are the students actually speaking. So the Mondriaan Foundation has a grant for art and media, and I thought, why not create then the media to have these students use it as a platform?
Yeah.
Actually, quite simply.
And what struck you most during those conversations?
With the students for Art School, the podcast?
Yeah.
How generous they were, first and foremost. How willing they were to be what others may perceive to be vulnerable, but I think just had a very critical honesty to it. That there was as much positive belief in the choice that they had made to go to an academy as much as a critical awareness of what that academy and what that experience was offering them. And that there is still as much romanticism in the idea of being an artist and what that could entail, as much as a will to change those romantic dreams, I suppose.
Yeah.
There was a very interesting balance in both of those. Yeah.
And if we immediately answer the question that was just raised in the audience, like, should you be able to have a professional career as a result of an art education? Where do you position yourself? Like, what's your answer to that question?
What was the question again?
Should you be able to have a professional career if you have had
Any professional career.
as an artist?
Art careers.
And
Like the success in art school, does that mean, like, are you success in art school only if you then become a successful artist?
No, I wouldn't say so. I was a pretty bad painter myself. I graduated from art school, and my first and final show was my final exam. And after that, I realized this was not my future, but I stayed operating and working happily, collaborating in the cultural sector for the past 30 years now. I have to say one of the reasons, and what interests me, was also a self-initiative among some students more than others. There is a different way of experiencing an art academy and what you can do with it and what it offers you. In many cases, there are students who do their courses. Supposedly art education in the Netherlands is very resilient, by the way. There's a very high percentage of students that begin and finish the study more than compared to other HBO's, as you say in the Netherlands, more than other professional studies. In other words, they're a very resilient type of student. But some students really do their curriculum, and that's that. And others take the opportunities that's given to them with two hands, and they start to create things. Often, those that initiate self and with others in their school or recent alumni, finding the holes in the cities, are usually the ones that expand and grow from there and develop a cultural career.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, that doesn't necessarily need to be artistic, because there are cultural projects that can be extremely artistic. I've told in one of the, I think maybe in all of the interviews when I introduced, I had a very interesting conversation once with a person who worked for the police, who had gone to art school. And it was an extremely interesting conversation, because they did start to reveal what certain ways of thinking applied to the work they did in a completely different sector. I find that very interesting, personally. But maybe we should get to that later.
Definitely. You said there's a lot of individual differences between people who go to art school. There's also a lot of individual differences between art schools in the Netherlands. In the podcast, you really don't make very explicitly, like sometimes you hear Sint-Joost or you hear Willem de Koning, but mostly the students are from different schools, they're mixed. Do you think there is such a thing as the education you receive at a Dutch art academy? Can we speak about that?
I wouldn't say the education that you receive at a Dutch art academy, but I do think that there is I think you could speak in general terms of the expectation of what it may offer within the cultural sector of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a very international cultural sector, that's true. However, it is also very small on a national level. It's an extremely small sector for a country that has 13 academies. Miriam, help me. Is it 13? Yeah.
13. Yeah.
Which is a lot, let's be honest. So I think in that sense, what the expectations could be that come from it, you could perhaps speak about a certain typology.
Great. Before we go to the students, what do you hope to achieve this evening? Like, what is, and not just this evening, but what is the message that you want everyone who listens to your podcast and this project to change in their thinking about art education?
First of all, I would hope that, as I said at the beginning, as far as I'm concerned, this entire project and thinking for me has been to let the students speak and to give them a platform. If Art School as a podcast project or otherwise can continue, it would be for that reason. I don't need to make a show about it, but just to say I took my own voice out of the podcast as well. I didn't want there to be an interference with what they had to tell. So that's already in that sense a win-win situation, considering also how many students, current students and alumni are here in the audience tonight. Also, an enduring conversation. I would really hope for that. This is an important topic. There has a lot been said in just after the COVID period, where code of conduct, and cultural governance were mainline features of things that needed bettering at art academies and in art education. Having said that, there is a lot to be said of how changes could be made on a curricular level, on the level of students and their own involvement in the institutional processes that go on at art academies. I think that's very essential. And Sepp maybe will speak more about this, I don't know, but also the understanding that there is, in that sense, a reality of what your practice can offer you after the academy. And that brings me back to that program I did for the Mondrian Power Up program, where I saw that with just that little bit of sprinkling of seasoning, I suppose, of giving that kind of insight, really led to a lot. A lot of the students that got together in those groups, they're still actually operating together, which I think is really hopeful. So that kind of endurance, lasting effect, would be very valuable, as far as I'm concerned.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. We will be back on stage, so we will hear your voice a little bit more. But now first, I do want to give the stage to the students. And we have two students here who are in the podcast as well. Nadia Dattatreya and Jessica Kuhn. Please give them... Dattatreya, sorry. Nadia Dattatreya studies for a master's degree in behavioral economics at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam and follows a BA in fine art at the Willem de Koning Academy. And Jessica does a Bachelor of Fine Arts at the Koninklijke Academie van Beeldende Kunsten in The Hague and a BA in Glass at the Gerrit Rietveld Academie. Welcome, both of you. What was it like to hear all those other voices of all those, when you heard the result of the podcast? Were you surprised by things you heard? Nadia?
It was, I thought it was very touching, I think, to maybe what Huib already said, to hear everybody be so open, genuine, vulnerable with each other on the podcast. And also nice that we all kind of think about the same things, but then from a different perspective. I thought it was very nice. I felt less alone, like, oh, there are many academies with students experiencing the same things, more or less. So that was a nice thing to hear, yeah.
Should I move it a bit?
Yeah, can just move it.
So if we're talking about different voices, I also want to clarify that I'm wearing a wig. And in a sense, I am also having two voices at the same time, whereas I'm presenting the Royal Academy in The Hague, but also the Rietveld Academy in Amsterdam. And that, in a sense, I was thinking about the question earlier about what art is having as an impact towards the world. And I just want to kind of reflect back what is the impact that the world has on me. And it's just a little side note before we go into this. In a sense, because I'm in two art academies, I'm being asked by the bureaucracy of the academy that I'm not allowed to make the same work for each academy. So, and to go around that, I decided that I'm two different artists making the same work. So right now I am Ophelia, and then maybe later we change.
Oh. Welcome, Ophelia, then. Yeah. So in the podcast there are many different themes, but tonight we will be discussing the transition from an art academy to the professional world, and you have not made that transition yet. So that makes you gives you the unique position also to really talk from within that academy, like in which way you are prepared or not prepared, or and also taught to think about what it means to be an artist. So I actually wanted to start with, have your thoughts changed about what it means to be an artist since you enrolled?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Because Well, first I studied economics, so I did my bachelor in economics, and then I was almost finished, and I thought, I had this rebellious voice in my head that said, go to art school, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna do it. So at first, I was like, oh, it's just like a fun, nice gap year at an art academy, and then that became 2 years, and then 3 years, and now I'm almost graduated.
You're almost an artist.
Yes, I'm almost an artist, and I always said, yeah, it's just like a nice little trip, you know. So only since I think like half year or last year, I started seeing myself, oh, like, you know, I'm gonna be an artist or cultural entrepreneur, how you want to call it. And just by going outside and talking to a lot of people, I've seen there's many different ways to be an artist, and you can also use a bachelor's degree in economics to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you one of those art students for which there was never another option than doing art?
I actually never considered doing art at all. It wasn't part of the plan. I thought maybe journalism, I thought maybe philosophy, and I dropped out of high school, and I didn't have any other ways than to study art, because that was the only education I could do with my degree, with a 21+ test. So it is a great loophole for anyone out there. If you want to study anything, like an actual study with actual points, then I recommend doing Art Academy.
Yeah. And what was your idea about becoming? So, did you change about really becoming an artist, and what does that mean to you?
I think in a way I'm often reacting to my environment, and in a sense that in the Art Academy I always want to go against something. So right now I have to go against the Art Academy, whereas later I will have to go against the outside world. So we will see how that would look like. But I guess in that sense it does really shape the way I am looking at art, because I think the idea of being context aware, etc., those are ideas that we are getting taught at Art Academy, much more so than outside, and I will definitely bring them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the first fragment. If we have it.
That's I think my biggest scare for graduating. I really want to get off this island. But you will.
You want or you don't want to?
I want, yeah.
Already? Because I feel...
After 4 years.
I feel already that I want to get off this island.
Yeah. We're feeling this, okay, where's the boat? We need to get off and get into the world and see what's happening.
Because I feel like this whole idea of that Sint-Joost creates, which I like, I completely agree on. But I feel like it's not sustainable, this lifestyle. And that's why I feel like I should get off this island as quick as possible so I can get into reality and figure out how to live this lifestyle in a sustainable way.
But don't you first want, for me I just first want to know what I'm doing and maybe know if you can get good at art, but get satisfaction enough from the things I make so that I'm happy with them. Yeah, it's mostly about this. I think I'm the most, maybe not the most, but I'm really critical about my work. So I need to first be happy with the things I do, and that's why I really need this safe space and not get on the boat, let the boat go by and sit on this island.
Do you consider art school an island?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a lovely island. But yeah, I do think it's an island. Also, this fragment is from Sint-Joost, which is more of an island than WDK in Rotterdam, where I go. And I think when you choose an art academy, that's a thing to consider. Like how much water between you and the rest of the world. And in Rotterdam, what I like is that, yes, it's an island. It's a really safe space to explore, experiment, do all your crazy ideas. But they really encourage you to go into the city, to have collaborations with like your neighbors or your street or your buurthuis. So I think for WDK, not that much of an island. For school, of course, yeah, it's still school. But from all the academies, I think it's with you on the boat already. Yeah.
I think as for KBK, for the Royal Academy, it is. I do feel it's an island, but the island is also the city. So The Hague itself feels like very much a city because the institutions are very involved and there's very great ways of exhibiting your work. So let's say it's a bit more of a continent. And then, whereas in Amsterdam at the Rietveld, maybe I should take it off then when I speak about the Rietveld. Yeah, I mean, we also tell ourselves that we have our own language. Like we speak a Rietveld language, which is it's a kind of mix of different countries speaking different accents of English, and it becomes its own English. And in a way, we are such a bubble, for sure. Yeah.
And do you think that you are prepared? Like, do you need a boat to get off the island? Do you think that it should be part of the education? Or is it really cultivating that time on the island the most important?
I guess that's what I really liked about the podcast specifically, because in a sense, we are kind of being hypocritical, whereas we want to get off the island, but then on the other hand, we say like, oh, it's not enough time. We really need more time to develop and stay here longer. But I also really want to go into the outside world. So I think I'm not myself. I'm grappling with this. I'm already in Art Academy for 6 years, so I'm already overstaying my time. And I could see myself even longer there. For example, in Germany, it's quite common that you stay there for 8-9 years until you're 30. But I think that I kind of feel in the Netherlands you are required to be aware that you should leave the island at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. And does that scare you?
No.
No?
I'm ready to get off the island. I love it there, but yeah, it's a great place. But that's because I have a different background already. So for me,
because when you compare that, the professional skills that you have been taught in your other studies, is there something that you think that art academies could learn from the economists?
Yeah, and then it's...
Or the other way around, that's also...
Yes, that as well. I think they could learn a lot from each other. And actually my teachers at my economics degree course, they're super interested and, oh, wow, they're very open and they really also want to help me in like giving that a place, in my schedule, as well as my teachers at the Art Academy. Mm-hmm. But learning from each other, yeah. What I think is like what the students at economics, they generally know is that, okay, you go to school, you get your degree, but for your work experience, for your communicative abilities, for your resume preparations, you have to do internships, you have to go outside, you have to go to recruitment events, like pretty corporate, You have to do it yourself. What my university, you stay there to learn your professional skills, like Google Calendar. It's not going to be enough if you're graduated and want to find a job. But in art school, they that's not really a thing, because they think, oh, my professional skills, it's not really what I think about at all. So I think that is what Art Academy could learn from university students, that to get the work experience, to get a job afterwards, you're going to have to do it yourself, and it's not in the academy.
And in a way, yeah, so they may be practicing that because you have to do it yourself afterwards, but you feel like there could be more like not tangible art skills, but more like the skills around that. Or what do you mean?
Not that you have to be able to write a funding for the Money Fund right away, but maybe just internally a bit more focus on how to write a good email to teachers, because I hear from teachers that they receive like way too informal emails with a shit reason that you're not at school. Like, I think if you just like tiny, I'm looking over there, like tiny adjustments where the students also show that they respect the teachers and the school and also the materials that they are using, I think that is a good first step into stepping out of the academy.
Yeah. How do you listen to that? Have you been taught to write good emails?
Oh, no. I can write emails, I swear. I think it's a complicated matter because on one side, I think it takes a lot of courage to go into art. It is not an easy thing. It is sort of saying no to a lot of safety and security, and it brings up a lot of anxiety, and that in itself, choosing for your passion is an insane thing to do. So I kind of would hope that the island keepers, that they could do a better job at making sure that this sacrifice is honored more, in a sense that we get the support, that we know there is maybe a safety net out there eventually. I don't know in what form, but right now I think the most daunting thing is that indeed you are in the deep waters afterwards, and what other perspectives do you actually have? Are you able to do another study afterwards? Can you do so? Well, actually it's you pay double tuition fee. You pay almost an international tuition fee afterwards. So for art students, you have to, if you want to become an artist, you're being told you need an art degree. So you go for that art degree. But what are the alternatives if you want to do something else? Because you can't study something else afterwards as easily. So I think just in that sense, a little bit of guidance would and perspective would help.
Yeah, because we just heard like Huib say like he had a flourishing career in a I don't know if he did another studies actually, but the implication being that the things that you learn at an art academy can also be applied in different working fields, not necessarily having to go through another studies, but that way of thinking you might end up at the police. Like, is that something you feel? Is that already giving up on the dream of becoming an artist by thinking about that during your education, or is that something you feel that should be talked about and taught?
It's really funny that my first day at the Fine Arts department at the Willem de Koning, I also studied there before, so I did like 3 art academies. And there told me on the first day of theory that
I feel you should remove some clothing. But
that they basically said, quote, we don't want to disappoint you, but we have to disappoint you. You're not going to make any money with this, so better have a good side job, and ideally a better paying side job so you can do more art. And that really struck me as a sort of reality check. Okay, well, thank you, at least I don't have to live in a delusion. But at the same time, I love to be a romantic and just think everything's going to be amazing and it's going to work out and we can all flourish together one day and create beautiful things. So I don't want to actually really destroy this illusion, because I think it's a great drive for make things happen and think about alternatives. Yeah.
Were you disillusioned at some point, or you entered?
I already ended Samar without illusion.
Yeah.
So actually, I became more delusional. So thank you. And more, I think, also more light when thinking about the future. So with less, also with like very different expectations, but also different, minder moedjes. Zeg maar.
Yeah.
Like more openness and like it's okay, you know, it's gonna be fine. So I became more delusional. Yeah.
Great. Is there if there was one? So we will be talking with the people Yeah, wanted to say something about have left the island, returned, worked there. I'm going to leave this metaphor now. But about the people who work professionally in the art academies. And we will be talking about the future of the academies. Is there something a direction you feel they are going in? Or if you could look ahead 10 years, what do you wish for the art academies?
I'm kind of seeing in a way that the social layer of the accountants are ruling at the moment, and things are being asked to be quantified and measured and be, explained. And I think
At which of the schools or all of them?
I think that to the schools that have gone into this agreement with the government to get extra funding in return to be more measured, which almost all the academies did in the Netherlands except for the Rietveld Academy. And the Rietveld Academy is sort of, for me, the last safe haven where I feel like that's not happening. And I'm so happy, so please keep it that way, Miriam. I'm begging you. And because I think it's really important that there is a place where the market doesn't enter and doesn't influence the processes that artists go into and the search they're conducting. But I am very aware that the course of time, the zeitgeist is going more into the direction of we need to measure things. So I think we need to start preparing for that and make sure how can we keep these things at bay at most.
And how do we do that?
I'm not a policymaker, I'm just like...
We will be talking to the... I will ask the same question in a moment, but...
Like where art academies are
going, or where do you think they are going, and where do you hope they would go?
Well, you said in I think the podcast or when we talked that you go to Rietveld and KBK and that they are rivals.
I like to say they have a friendly rivalry.
Okay, that's something different. But then because a rivalry is not really beneficial if all the academies are under stress. So maybe like try to find a common door that you talk together and that you together articulate to the accountants or people that listen to accountants what the added value is of these academies with all their very different approach of teaching art, because rivalry is not gonna be beneficial for anyone.
Yeah, I think in that sense, it's also really good to start thinking about the self, in a sense that I went into conversations and a sense of ego sort of arises. And you cannot go into a conversation with having this ego-first approach. So I think that's also indeed a place to start.
Thank you so much. I will be taking this advice and these questions to my next panel. Can I have a warm applause for Nadia, Dattatreya and Jessica Kuhn? I'm also giving you a mic to share, so if there's something you want to add into the conversation, please do. I want to welcome Huib Haye van der Werf back and also introduce Miriam Bestebreurtje and Sepp Eckenhausen. Please, can I have a warm applause? Yeah.
If it's all right, Veronica, if I could just say one thing, because I didn't mention it in my introduction, and I'm noticing that perhaps it is good to mention right now. The podcast was designed, or the concept of the podcast was to interview students who were following fine arts at art academies. And I think it is important to mention this. We are speaking about the future of art education. Art education is a very broad expanse of different disciplines that can even go to ballet. When it relates to how the ministry looks at things.
Yeah.
I expressly went for fine arts. I welcome this discussion to go beyond that realm. But the reason I went for fine arts is because fine arts is essentially the one least, perhaps in relationship to the changes taking place in society and at art schools in general, have the most sort of autonomous framework within which to educate and curriculum to build curriculum. If you go to graphic design or even glass or sculpture or very specific sort of subjects, there might be trajectories in a sector waiting for you that operates differently than when you've graduated as a fine artist. I just wanted to say that before we continue.
Good point, thanks. Sepp Eckenhausen is an arts researcher, an educator and an organizer. And in his research he explores sustainable economic models for the arts. At least that's what your website says, Sepp.
I did not write that myself. Yes. Something in that direction.
Something in that direction. You can tell us all about the direction you actually do. Miriam Bestebreurtje lectured in art history herself and has now been having a long career in the management of art schools at St. Joost, at the KHBK, and now as the director of bachelor education at the Gerrit Rietveld Academy. Welcome to the both of you. First, an open question. Is there something that you wanted to respond to the conversation we just had?
Yeah, just a very general remark that I think all the points discussed and raised are very top of mind for, I think, many of the people here in the room. I see also many of my colleagues here. And I think this attests to the fact
Can you take the mic a little bit closer to you? Yeah, great.
That, I think that just proves that this is a very urgent topic to speak about. And the voices the students gave to those topics from their perspective, I think many of us who are more, let's say, in management or tutoring are always hopeful to hear those voices and very receptive to them. So I think everyone present here tuned into that through the podcast.
Great, thank you. Sepp?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think to see in the podcast, in the conversation here, in the interest that in the program, that there is a kind of a rising interest in what I would call economic sustainability of arts practices, and also what the Art Academy does to support people in developing that, alone or collectively. And I think that's super, super important. I also really like the insistence on, I mean, it's objectively a horrible life decision to go and study in Art Academy, right? Like, economically speaking. And the defense of that as an act of defiance and celebrating that, I think, is really important. The one thing I would push back against a little bit is the idea of the Art Academy as an island. Because, of course, socially, educationally, you're with a small peer group, probably, and you feel like it's an island, and this is to be cherished. At the same time, we always talk about like the expectations of reality after the academy. There's a really good and important point that was made by a beautiful analysis by Silvio Lorusso. He teaches at the Design Academy, but he also writes prolifically and really beautifully. He wrote an article called Expectations as Reality, in which he makes a very strong point that Art Academy itself is also embedded and in that reality that people are afraid of. You rent a house in the real world, you buy your groceries in the real world, the loans you have are real loans, right? So we can also not really distinguish between art school and reality, in the sense that, yes, it's a defiant choice to go to Art Academy, but not everyone can make that choice. It's a class position that plays into being able or not to make that choice oftentimes. And that then will reproduce what the art field will look like in the end. So I think even though if we defend the art school as a kind of a safe place or a place of learning, we cannot look at it as materially separate from the world beyond.
Agreed.
Yeah, great.
That is the one point I think is really important to continuously keep in your minds, that the art schools are filled with people who live in reality and have a very real life that they experience every day through rent, jobs, difficulties with administration. Everything is present. And I think the potential of the art school is to look at that world through a different lens and react to it differently, in a different register or with different materials and means. So in that sense, it is separated, but in a very reflective way.
Yeah. you want to add something? No?
Not for now.
Nothing now. Yeah, and Sepp, you were saying, so it is, the art academies are definitely already part of society, of the world, but also of this art system, this art economy. Can you tell us a little bit about how you also in your research look at that relationship between the academies on the one hand and the art market on the other hand?
Yeah. It's a difficult one, and also because it's very multifaceted. But if we look at what we think of as the art market, right? The galleries, the fairs, the auction houses, and so on, where we see that a very small percentage of the artist takes a lot of the benefit of that market, and often not just the artists. It's usually the traders or the collectors or the auction houses or the galleries who earn the most with that money. This is a reputation economy that is a winner-takes-all economy, right? So for the top 3% to earn a lot, the other 97% also still has to be there. Because if you are a big collector, how can you invest a lot of work in an artwork that you cannot distinguish specifically as not being mediocre but great? You know, for the great to exist, all the mediocre has to also exist. So this is why Gregory Chalette is an American artist, activist, and educator. He calls the majority of the art students pre-filled artists or dark matter, in the sense that they also are required to exist to keep together the art world, right? Without them, it just dissolves. And
he also says that from an employment perspective, that they're also framing the works for those artists in the first and the second percentage. And that they're also the ones who are framing the works for the artists who are showing the works in the museums. In other words, there is an industry within that industry, as far as if I remember that piece.
Yeah, but also to have it, this is one side, right? And this is like the market that is present, even if we think it's not present. Or if we think we're not part of it, we're still part of it. But at the same time, we also...
So that's very cynically thinking the art academies provide enough artists that we can then separate in good artists and very many bad artists, so the market can exist.
On one level, art academies are educating to participate in the Hunger Games, yes.
Okay.
But that is just one level.
That's a cynical take, but maybe also... Yes, wait, I have an intervention.
It's not. Oh, jawel. Maybe you were going to react on your own cynical view. I think it's a really interesting, fun, critical way to look at all the artists that exist. But then I wanted to add that the few, maybe 1-2% of good artists, it's not that they're the best artists. I think they made it just really easy to be chosen, to be picked, because they knew the little loopholes, or they had some connections, network. So I think it's not necessarily that they are the best artists. They just knew how to get there and how to be in the room where there was the chosen.
Yeah, whether through artistic quality or other reasons, they know how to play the reputation economy. This is absolutely true. But I just wanted to also take the other side and say, we know, we were talking about professional practice before, and what is a professional practice? We know, the numbers are there. They've been sorted out already over a decade ago. We know that most artists in the Netherlands have what is so-called a hybrid practice, meaning that they make art, but actually they make the majority probably of their money with other things than the art making itself. And that actually art academies also educate people ultimately to develop a hybrid practice. And we could say, well, that should not be the case, or it should be the case, but in any case, this is the reality. And what I see is that art academies are becoming a little bit more aware of educating towards how to make a hybrid practice in a healthy way. And I think this is a really good development.
How do you do that, Miriam?
Yeah, I think the question on how to sustain yourself as an artist has been present in art schools for a longer time. It's not a very recent theme, but I think what really shifted at some point was that we really started talking about an artist practice. So where art schools for a long time have been concentrating in educating students to develop their own artistic views and abilities, we started, let's say, stretching that to say part of that is also thinking about what your practice is going to be. How will you choose to become a hybrid artist, or will you choose to continue on into other fields, or so that have that conversation more present? And in the practice, for example, also including questions on how to sustain a practice while staying healthy. So having those conversations also included. So I think this idea that you educate for a profession was present, but we became much more precise about what that question then actually should be, or what that education should speak about. And then I think the diversity of practices that come out of art education are sometimes quite challenging to prepare for. On the other hand, I think art education does have at its center skills and abilities in the curriculum that are very transferable, as it turns out, such as Huib and his career and my career. I was trained as an artist first and then did a lot of other things. So I think this you could view this as a failure, like, oh, a big disappointment. But for me personally, and I think you agree, is that I recognize so many of the qualities that I was educated for.
Huib.
Yeah, and I hope I'm still like within the topic that we're speaking about. But I think it's interesting to note that, I mean, what brought us here together today and what this podcast was about was the HBO level and not the MA level. So
Yeah.
it's very important to understand that this is the professional education that you receive here in the Netherlands. And let's assume that when you've graduated, you are a professional.
Yeah,
If
so
you want
the B in HBO means
Beroep.
that you have
Yeah,
a profession.
exactly.
Yeah.
But if you want to apply that profession, for example, to teaching, you're not going to get a job teaching anywhere in the Netherlands if you don't have an MA. So then I want to bring up something that Jessica mentioned, or maybe it was Nadia or both, which is the management level at art academies. So the phenomenon in the Netherlands where art academies are no longer St. Joost, but Avans. They're no longer Academie Maastricht, but Zuid. They're no longer the KBK, but the KBK and even the conservatory, which in a way also comes with its own problematics. These are management coming in and artistic expertise going out in this whole reshuffling and the reorganizing of an art academy. And I don't think that management understands in that sense so far as to what teaching, and I return to the subject, of taking your own initiative can actually mean for exactly that HBO level. Because that, I think, for me personally, is one of the most important things that can change the experience of being in an art academy, is understanding for what many people go to an art academy for is discovering and wanting to identify, first of all, discover themselves and continue in that sort of like self-identity. It's a very essential part of many experiences at an art academy, but also finding that you're discovering that with other people and establishing groups and communities. If those communities are taught how to put themselves together, organize themselves, write grants, write emails, God forbid Excel sheets, which still scare me to this very day. But if they would learn that, then I think the opportunities that they would have after a HBO towards MA, or even ignoring the MA then because they've achieved so much already on their self-initiative, would already make a world of difference. And I think it would also change that perceptive of how management sees that statistical necessity is actually necessary. There might be a different way of looking at that numerical necessity that ministries and municipalities and foundations are asking for.
So you're saying on the one hand we have this move where the art academies are becoming part of
businesses,
of bigger businesses.
They're selling their buildings. St. Joost sold their building. Maastricht sold their building. KBK is a nice piece of property. I hope they don't sell it. But
yeah.
I'm being cynical now. Really, that's a devastating thing. In one of the podcasts, one of the speakers said that what was so essential was being able to get on the bus for 20 minutes and go to this place with a beautiful garden. My sister went to St. Joost. I remember it from visits there as well. And I'm not saying that the whole world falls apart when the building goes away, but the idea that the building suddenly is just seen as a piece of property and it's gone, where in that same podcast, the Academy in Vienna is spoken about perhaps a bit too romantically, but still that building was built as an art academy more than 200 years ago, and it still is an art academy, and it's still run by an artist.
Yeah, but just so I understand you correctly, as an outsider, I would assume becoming part of a bigger organization that is more focused on vocational, professional education would imply more professional skills rather than less, right? Or are those two developments not linked?
I would see them as one and the same, to be honest.
But you're kind of in favor as well, or do I not understand as honoring those professional skills within the?
Yeah, I think it would contribute positively to a curriculum when the school makes available the possibilities for those initiatives to be taken, as well as teaching how that initiative can be helped by all means. But to make that available, I did go on to study art history, and it was very simple. There was a magazine, Simulacrum, at the University of Amsterdam. I got on the editing team. When I was at the Art Academy, there was a space in The Hague, 1646. I found a way to start programming there because I just kept coming and speaking to the guy who was running it first, and these things started to roll because a community was built around it. It's a self-supporting system. Sorry.
No, I transferred from Rietveld to art history at the University of Amsterdam, went on the board of Simulacrum, interviewed my future boss, and got a job. So, yeah.
Simulacrum, guys.
Right there.
Yeah. So how do you look at that? Maybe leave that and maybe do that at the bar afterwards. All the Simulacrum guys can reunite there. Miriam, how do you listen to that call for making those options of those professional skills that are not necessarily tied to an art practice but are important for sustaining a profession, how to integrate them into art education?
Well, I support Huib's point on how can I phrase this best? So this, for example, one of both examples mentioned, Simulacrum and 64, are initiatives started by students. Simulacrum was started by students. So I think there's a great power and great potential in this. And I do believe that schools need to be very aware of those spaces and very supportive of those spaces. And I think if you would make a very sharp point, which I don't think any of the art schools are having trouble with, but in many educational situations, the question would come up, yes, but are there study points attached? Or how do we free up funds for this? Or that, of course, always is a question. But I think the frameworks in general education are much tighter than in art education in general. So I think art education is the place where self-initiated initiatives can come up. I think all art education should be mindful of being aware of them, supportive of without taking them over or institutionalizing them, really develop the potential of that together with the students. And I think many of the art schools are successful. I know that Rietveld has had many platforms where this could happen, and it ebbs and flows because, of course, it's not something you can force people to do. There's a very organic aspect to it. But I think the awareness of art schools that those are the spaces where both skills are learned, but also topics are coming to the agenda that we need to be aware of. I think that is a call to all art schools.
Yeah. Sepp, you said like the movement within the art schools, and we heard Miriam says it as well, has been towards that more hybrid models. But do you mean combining really like a pure art practice with something else to sustain yourself, or can you also tell, informed by your research, like what kind of practices there are? Like, are we maybe focusing too much on that 3% that is just going to be super rich, and then, but like, what other ways are there to think about
practicing your art.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of the 3%, good for you, of course, great. So specifically, the term hybrid, it's a hybrid practice. There's a report in Dutch, if you can look it up if you're interested. It's called the Hybride Kunstenaar. It's made by researchers at the Sint-Joost Academy at the time, where they correct the numbers of everyone working in the arts graduating after Academie, because it is so hard to say what a professional practice is. Does it mean being registered with the KVK? Does it mean making all of your money with exhibitions or sales? I mean, probably not. So then what is an artistic practice or a professional artistic practice? So they just started looking at, who's graduated, what are they doing now, and where did they get their money from? And it turns out that many people are having art practices and making maybe some money with it, but yes, making a lot of most of their money with other things. And probably if that's teaching at an art academy, they would put it under CV, and if not, they won't put it under CV. But it's the reality for most of us. And what I'm saying is not that the art academies per se are getting themselves more hybrid, but there is a little bit more, gradually, a little bit more of understanding that this is the reality that we're teaching toward. And then how we do that, I mean, there's many different hurdles that we could talk about, but you asked me what are the things that are happening in the field, right? How do people actually do them? This kind of sustainment of their practice, and there's, if we get specific, and I think this is the beauty, it explodes, the perspectives explode, because, you have people founding a bread fund together, or a cooperative gallery or studio space, what is so wonderful in Art Academy is that you have this peer group of people that give you input for your practice and develop yourself. But people, find that after that they don't have that anymore, so they organize differently to continue having this kind of peer feedback to feed their practice and to keep developing. So they start joining unions and campaigning for fair practice, and there's all these kinds of really important initiatives and different dimensions to what an economically sustainable practice could be, which, by the way, I would say is way beyond the scope of what we could ever grasp with a notion like cultural entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we spoke about have you been disillusioned or becoming delusional? I think this aspect of what do we consider success needs to be talked about much more. Mm-hmm. I think there's an implicit expectation with which both students and teachers come to the school, and needs to be discussed much more openly, I think, because, as you say, this continuation of learning after academy, making your money in a different field than your art practice, maybe moving into a different field altogether, if we consider those aspects as failure of art education, then we're really stuck in a very romantic view, because the reality for at least 15 years has been very joyfully also this. I know, for example, a lot of teachers teaching in art academies and considering it part of their practice, not something that you go to because you have to, because it is a joyful aspect of their practice. So yeah, and there are, you're looking at me like, what's she talking about?
I'm not sure if it's always a happy part of their
practice. No, of course not. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, we shouldn't dwell on this, because I think it's really about the students and what we can change. Exactly. We can speak a lot about structural changes that have already started to be implicated and worked on in the last years, with a lot of schools having to reorganize themselves. But here is where academies also differ, I would say. Yeah. And the Rietveld really is, in that sense, a different place. Also how it's had to deal with it and the parameters that it's been given. Whereas what I mentioned before, a school that's become a business in that sense and has had to reorganize really through concepts of management. thought up by and enacted by managerial levels. That really does make a difference.
Yeah.
Also in the expectations of what should come from it then as a return on that investment.
Yeah, because the environment is quite hostile towards art at the moment, towards higher education in general. So the money flow will probably go down and continue to go down, but also like the report that was presented 2 days ago, I think, about the attitude towards art by the Raad van Cultuur, the attitude towards art in the Netherlands. Like, how do we sustain that? What we heard at the beginning, that also going to art school is a brave thing to do, to honor that instinct, and also should be an environment where that then is kept alive or bolstered. Yeah. Like how, taking into account the political climate that we are in right now, how do we strengthen the art academies and keep them vital? Sepp.
I'll leave that to you first.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, or no, several billion-dollar question probably. I think maybe a good place to start is the acknowledgement that the slow but hostile takeover of the art academies and art as such by creative industries ideology has not helped very much. On the contrary.
What do you mean with that?
What I mean is that what we were talking about before, that art academies are being scaled up, merged with other universities of applied science, that everything is framed in terms of study points, that you have to graduate fast, otherwise you're expensive. That's the reason people want you to graduate fast. Longer students don't earn more money for the institution. So, there's all kinds of incentives within the academy, but also beyond. The insistence on transferability of skills is maybe nice, but impact, you have to show impact all the time, also in different industries. The framing of art as an industry to begin with. These are all creative industry kind of, this idea that there can be a for-profit cultural sector. Right? That was introduced in the 1980s in the UK and then very quickly also imported into the Netherlands and as part and parcel of neoliberalism. We also see that reflected in art academies. I mean, it's a very long story, but the thing that is very clear is that this has, globally speaking, not improved the income position of artists. So maybe it's time to try something else, is what I'm trying to say. And then what is that something else? I don't know. I mean, the notion I really like is economically responsible art education. And I think this kind of deliberation about what that can mean is a really good starting point. And there are many things going on in art academies already. There's a lot of pilots. Maybe one thing I would say is that I feel that the awareness is there, that art academies have kind of a difficult time in connecting to society for the students who graduate, but also in general. But that kind of systemic intervention beyond small pilots is proving to be a very big hurdle.
What do you mean by that?
That's, I mean, so this is, I'm not so sure how to differentiate between, because you asked about the general position of art in society and how this is under pressure. We were before talking about the preparation for the professional field as an artist. Of course, these are very related, but I feel that at least in preparing for the professional field, art academies have a very difficult time in finding structural solutions, in implementing the kind of insight that we're sharing here into the curriculum. I think that also relates to having a kind of clear societal vision. What are you educating people towards? And I don't think, like, some students are very lucky because they have teachers that tell them a lot about, like, they have to kind of reality check at the beginning of studying, like, you're not maybe going to make money, so what else are we going to do? Other students don't have that throughout their education and are angry afterwards because no one ever talked to them about this, and money was a taboo throughout. And I think this is maybe related to the fact that I don't think any arts education very clearly tells their prospective students, if you study with us, this is the vision we have for you in society. There you go. And many attempts have been made, but I don't think the right answer has been found. And I think it relates to the...
Miriam, do you think that art academies should have a vision that they tell their students?
Yes, of course I do. And I think I can speak about I will speak very shortly about a very boring topic, which is more on the governance level, and also speaking to what was said about how art academies in the Netherlands operate towards each other. The reality is that we are very well united as art academies, honoring and respecting each other's differences, but being in constant conversation about what it means to be an art academy in the reality of the Netherlands. And on top of that, also being organized on a European level with a governing body that represents us on European level and lobbies for art education broadly. What we did as a group of art academies worked very diligently for the last 2 years doing exactly this work. What do we educate for was revisited after quite a long period, it not being revisited. And that resulted in a vision for what do we educate for, what is the bachelor level, what is the master level, with the competencies attached. And I think there are 2 aspects to that we really try to do. One is positioning art education as a separate field of education. So not something that can be colonized, that can be, faded into other fields. It is a specific field of education that has its own competencies, its own curricula. So to also safeguard it from being pulled left and right as like the sexy add-on for things, or like the cozy or the interesting partner of the creative industries, for example, but assure it as a separate field of education. And the other is to situate art and artists within society, not separate from it. And then deriving from that vision, let's say the competencies, the skills and knowledge that students need to reach in a bachelor level or a master level to take up that role. And those are now implemented in the curricula, and each academy will do so differently, because all of our academies are different through context and history, and it will mean that studying at one academy will not be the same as another. And students can really suss out, hopefully, clearly, by these academies being explicit about how they act upon it, they can choose academies that match up with their expectations.
Yeah, do you see this?
I mean, I have a strong opinion about this, but I see we only have 15 minutes left, and there might be people in the audience that also have strong opinions.
Yeah,
I would
get
very
them
much like
to
to hear other voices as well.
I do want you to respond very briefly, and then we go to the room.
I'm afraid that my answer is kind of controversial.
Go for it.
It might spark a debate in the sense that one of the things I've considered, when I speak of, for example, selling buildings, this is a representation of this management, this process of management that's entered this formula that needs solving, which I frown upon. Having said that, I think the Netherlands really does have a lot of academies for such a small country. And when it comes to the notion of specialization, and when it comes to what you can expect after you've finished, it might be interesting for the academies, the QO, to sit down and to really have a long, hard conversation about exactly how these academies relate to each other and the different disciplinary programs. Because these are just the fine arts. These are just visual arts we're talking about, 12, 13. That's not, dance, music, circus, etc. That also fall under the OCNB. And visual arts, as far as I understand from a recent report, receives percentage-wise a pretty large amount of money in bulk for the students that come, plus the tuitions that come. So there might be some way to look at each other and learn from what's going on in these academies, and maybe also see where, I don't like the term, but where some of the bureaucratic and managerial fat could be cut away. so that some clarity could be created in what an academy can actually provide, and also to the student who's applying and graduating, what role that can offer society afterwards.
Well, I'm glad I got that opinion out of it. I see the first. I will take this one from you. Thanks. There you are. And I'm already giving this to someone who wants to go next.
There's so many wonderful points, from the race to the bottom to countering the impression that art education was an island. I come from the home of simulacrum, from the UvA, and we do educate artists at research masters and PhD level. So it's not just a race to the bottom, but also one to the top, and one that I think internationally really is on par with what's happening, because so many artists do see themselves as investigating urgent issues in the world. And when you have the privilege of teaching them, you see how incredibly independently they think, that you have to really think on your toes in order to respond to them, that there are visions for the future and everything that we need in society. And therefore, I really wish that we would have more solidarity between the art academies and the universities. We are both embattled, and that there isn't this sort of standalone position that is also, I think, rather precarious, and that we would see that artists... Art Academy, art education is a little bit like a Hotel California. You really cannot leave. You will think like an artist forever, and artists benefit the university to such a degree that I wish this was also the case for governments, for firms, for every aspect of society. It's not that artists need to just numerically, justify their existence or our existence all the time because there is a question of or valency or anything like that. It is because our judgments or analyses of society and where exactly we are is so clear and so sharp that there is pushback against that, but it's not because we're not good.
Thank you. Yes, is there someone else who wants to add something?
Yeah, I think one great point is that everybody enjoys art, and the public value of art is a great good, and everybody benefits from the art, but the artist. And I think this is a very important point to stress out. It's like the 3%, but it's worse, because the money made by people from arts, but not artists, is far too great. And I think here lays a very important point. We all should unionize and get together and close the value gap and make sure that everybody who makes arts also earns from arts. And this is also, look at the rest of society, unfortunately a bad point. Money is made by trade and not by producing in general. It's not just for the artist. And I think this is a very important point, that the money which is taken also by big tech, but in broader sense, should revolve to the arts. And I think this is something we need to think about.
And so is there a union for artists in the Netherlands?
Yes, there is. I'm not going to name one, but I could.
There are several.
Unionize and team up, and because this is an important battle we have to fight with each other.
Thank you. Someone else? A question or a remark? Has your question been answered?
Yeah, but I think a more important thing that I felt is lacking today is that we haven't really addressed the financial situation of students in the Netherlands nowadays. I remember 10 years ago I was living in Maastricht in a room that cost €270. And in 10 years that room has gone up 5 times the price, and the basisbeurs has gone up 10% or something. We even lost it at some point. How can we expect students to devote themselves in the way that art education is set up. If I was teaching also for a while, I had students go to class and at 5 check in for their job, work their job until 2 a.m. in the pub, and then have to come in the next morning for like a physical exercise class again. Like, that's not sustainable. That's not how you build a practice. And this problem is so much bigger than just the future of arts education. It's like, give students space and time and money to devote themselves to their education. I think.
I think that's a problem larger than just fine arts education, as you said. I grew up in the United States, where scholarships, grants, and special programs such as magnet schools were the foundation for an answer to this question. Mind you, the United States is a very different place than when I grew up there in the 1980s and 90s. Having said that, it did contribute to an understanding of talent development, a term that you hear all over the place in the Netherlands now as well. But if there's one thing that Americans are good at, is like seeing talent and trying to make the most out of that, and coming up with structural programs, in sort of on an institutional and also conceptual level, like the magnet schools are, to find a way to make that happen up until you're finished with school, because then you're thrown to the sharks. Let's be honest, there is no safety net whatsoever. But there is an opportunity to understand, and that understanding comes, and this is important, I believe, from a socioeconomic level. And that's something that's also not always discussed, is understanding which students are engaging in arts education, or any student in general, but certainly in art education and what they expect from it afterwards. One of the episodes on the podcast was about the notion of privilege. I was curious what students thought of their own privilege, if there were any, if they considered there was any. And I think that has to do with is understanding what you are socioeconomically, rather than not think about it at all. I don't know if that's an answer to your question, because again, I think the problem is across the board, for sure, especially in Amsterdam and Maastricht. I know both cities well. Yeah, maybe Sepp, you want to add to that? I don't know.
No, I can just second what you're saying, and then also point out that we are dealing with also conditions that are beyond us as art education or as a room, right? That these are very fundamental political questions, as is the one about like the general condition of art in society. Yeah.
But I think so. If you really think about reforming art education, for example, I think you could say like, okay, we're getting rid of these buildings. Is this money reinvested in affordable like social housing for students? Yeah. If you take yourself seriously as a university that thinks about the well-being of the people working with you at your space, you could say actually a target that we're taking is not how many people graduate, it's how many people have had access, we've made able to live close to the university grounds in housing that they could afford. That could be a metric that you develop.
But it's so rare for corporate level to think that way. And that's the problem. It's becoming corporatized.
Yeah, the problem is that
not everything,
the academies that are selling their buildings, so not the Rietveld Academy, but those academies that are selling their buildings, that's because those are not just art academies, they are general HBOs. And the art students use a lot of space, right? Like in Den Bosch, the St. Joost Academy, it was observed that the art students had a lot of studio space, and management thought, oh, well, that's a cost, that's a money drain. Let's cut it in half and put the business development program in the other half. Cross-pollination was the idea.
Well, at the same time, and Nadia mentioned it in the podcast, at Willem de Koning, as far as I understand, you don't have studio spaces, which is obviously super problematic. How are you going to teach an artist to operate and work in a studio without having known what a studio space is? Even if it's just, 2 walls, a little bit around you, a minimum, but just not having your own space to understand that practice. I think I also agree, it's hugely problematic.
I have time for a few more questions here at the front row. Oh, it's not the front, but...
It's just maybe a remark what Huib said, is that art academies becoming corporate. But if you just look at the Netherlands, how the whole system is organized, that the art academies get money from the government to survive. I mean, you have the reality check that the government doesn't want to give you money, and student numbers are not that many. So you decide to close the doors, or you go along to a certain extent at the managerial level and try to survive. So there is always this dilemma between what you do, because you, at the end of the day, want to keep the art education. And as Miriam said, that all the KUOs, they work very closely together to keep the education going. So I think it's very harsh to just say that art academies are becoming corporate. They are not. And I can tell I'm coming from Hogeschool der Kunsten Den Haag, but also from the KBK. We are not selling our building. We are renovating the buildings to keep it going and to keep it for the students. So, yeah, it's kind of, you have the society and also the political point that was brought in, because if the government is saying that art education and artists are leftist hobbies, then we are fighting that also. But then every one of us in our own way against that.
Thank you. There is resistance. Yes, I have a final remark here at the front row.
I even get the final remark.
You get the final, unless someone else really wants the final remark.
No, I'm more or less an outsider for the art scene, so sorry for that.
Final remark.
But then what I really liked about Huib's podcast and his introduction is that he said, I want to have the students talk about their fine art education and how they think about what's happening. And you even went so far that you kept your own voice out. And I really like that concept, ask the students to talk. And the first thing I must say is that the discussion is now heading towards a general political discussion and finance of universities and education. So I find that a pity. And the thing which I find remarkable, or which I noticed, is that when the students were talking, they were talking about the island they were on, and at the end of the at the end of their education, they get off the island with a boat. And now from the management side, they say no, we are not an island. They don't see it correctly. The students, we are part of the society, etc. So I find it an interesting point. Is there a discrepancy between how the students see it as an island where they can stay away from society, or are you talking about the same thing?
Well, then I guess we should have the last remarks with the students. That's very fitting. I think we can give both mics then to them. Is there any way you want to respond?
The fragment that began with students describing Art Academy as an island were students from St. Joost and from all the academies that is the most far outside of the city. We talked about garden. Well, Rotterdam, we don't have a garden. So no, I definitely, roof garden, yeah. And we do a lot on it. We use every square meter because we don't have a lot. We don't have our studios. So about discrepancies, I think art education, like art school, is very much in society. I don't think we are dreaming on an island at all. We are very engaged and like always like focused outward, while having a safe space to look inside ourselves. What are you doing? Where are you from? And what is your place gonna be? And what is it already in the society that you're in?
I actually was really interested in how the panel was kind of rethinking, oh, maybe it's not an island. And I think I really would like to have an island that would feel really nice. Comfortable and safe, and perhaps, I don't know, we eventually eat each other alive, I don't know. But what I'm getting at is that I am very open to changing the metaphor as well and seeing it in different ways. I yesterday read an article that we could perhaps see how the automobile industry kind of infiltrated our own way of viewing art, and maybe we are cars that are going back to the garage, and then we're driving back to the petrol station, and then we are at the market, and we don't actually want to be there, but instead we'd much rather be with our peers and be on this island. But in a sense, what I really get from also the podcast was this strong notion of we want to be autonomous, we want to have our own sense of taking the route where we're going. And at the moment, the route is very much unclear, whether even obstructed. But I do think that at its core, free thinking is a really big part of that.
Thank you very much. I think everyone who hasn't listened to the podcast is now convinced that they should. So I all recommend you doing that. I want to thank my speakers, everyone here, especially the students. Thank you for being here. Please go and talk among yourselves at the bar. Thank you very much for being here.